Good evening. Hello. Tom's absolutely right. My love language is ribs. I get a hankering for them every now and again, and he blessed me with a rack of them. So, welcome to the last evening chapel. Insert pun and joke about getting your Christian life and worship credits, but relax, there's still morning chapel on Wednesday, so see you all there. Most of you probably know me as the guy who co-leads morning chapel band with Jeannie. Others of you may know me as the French tutor that has actually never been to a French-speaking country and who gets way more excited than you do about the order of direct object pronouns at the end of affirmative commands. Others of you may have read Scott's study spots in the Tartan, and still others may have seen me on Exit 17 Live and the great work that is done there. However, you may have seen me around, may have seen me involved in things, but I recognize that you don't know me, I don't know you. A lot of you, I recognize your face, but I don't know your names. I probably have never had a conversation with you. So let me take these first few minutes of this talk to make it a more personable conversation, and it's not me speaking at you, but rather us just having a talk, a sermon, as Tom likes to say. So let me just introduce myself a little more. Usually, introductions for me go as such in public. I'm sure some of you have similar situations. Hi, I'm Truett. Nice to meet you. Truett. Yeah, not Trent. Truett. That's it. Yeah, I know it's a pretty unique name. It's not very common. Thanks. I appreciate it. It actually is a family name. It is. It's actually on my dad's side. My great-grandmother, her name was Belva Truett, and I'm named after her father, Doc Edward Truett. So, pretty cool story. That's pretty much how it goes. It really is a cool story about Doc Truett, so ask me another time, or it's another chapel talk. We'll see. So, as for my namesake, that's that. I was born in Dallas, Texas, though, but moved to Cambridge, England when I was 3. Started school there as my dad was getting his PhD in Cambridge, and then moved back here in 2nd grade, lived in Arkansas for a year, which is where I attribute my hankering for ribs. Lived with my dad's family and his parents, and then moved up to Upland, Indiana, at Taylor University, where my dad teaches Old Testament. Ironically enough, Emily, who is speaking after me, went to Taylor her freshman year before transferring here, so we have this weird pseudo-relation to Taylor going on here at chapel. But that's not the point. As for my family, my parents divorced when I was in junior high, and since then my younger brother of 4 years, Emmett, and I have moved every other week to each parent's house. That was pretty much high school. My dad then remarried when I was a sophomore in high school, and I now have 2 half-siblings, Carson, who is 5, and my sister Ryan, who's turning 3 in October. That's pretty much it. My living situation, where I've traveled, how I grew up, that's pretty much it. Moving on now to what I want to talk about. Another important feature in my life has been something that I've been involved in for a decade, which is crazy to think about that I've been involved in something for a decade. But that thing is a summer camp in Michigan called Miracle Camp and Retreat Center. It's a classic Christian summer camp. 3rd and 4th graders through high schoolers come up and hear the gospel, hear the word preached. That's the primary focus, as well as obviously playing fun activities and bonding with their friends and creating friendships. As for me, I was there as a camper for 2 years in junior high, and then in high school I was a part of a 2-week counselor in training type program all through high school, and then finally after I graduated, I was full-time summer staff as an assistant counselor and lifeguard. The next summer after that, I was a counselor. Then last summer, I was the assistant program director, and we'll be returning to that this May. Late May, it's already May. And so obviously, this has been a very important part in my life, and I've made lifelong friendships and seen the Lord work in miraculous ways that have tied me intimately to the people there and the place. And amidst that, though, I have also failed. I've fallen hard and far, literally. Let me give you one example. The first one happened last summer, where I walked into a shed with no floor. Yes. I was talking with someone as I'm unlocking the door, and then I step in blindly, and my foot doesn't hit anything. And as soon as I feel this, without that, I stop, I look, everything freezes for a split second, and all I see is darkness. And the thought goes through my mind, I just think, this could be really bad. I think it's a maintenance shed. I thought I was in there to get something off a shelf. And there was nothing there. And long story short, I fall 4 or 5 feet, smack into a pipe, water bursts all over my chest and my face. I'm disoriented. Half of camp is out of water for 2 days. So, however, that wasn't the first time I fell either. The second story, the second example, and the one I want to narrow down on this evening, happened the summer of 2012 while I was a counselor at Miracle Camp. It involved what we in the camp community refer to as the trust fall. Still hurts to say it. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the TF, it is this sick and twisted ritual performed by sadistic team-building circles in an attempt to build trust and community within the team. During this ceremony, a person is standing on a platform and safely and trustingly falls into the loving and comforting arms of their team members. That is at least the intended goal. I, on the other hand, had a much different experience, a much less positive one. Now first, let's provide some context to the story. I'm a counselor. I've got my 10 kids, campers, with me. Taking them out to the woods. We're going to do the trust fall. We're going to build this cabin unity. And the procedure was as follows. Each camper would stand on the 4-foot-tall platform. They would state their biggest fear. Vulnerability, right? Then they would give the fear to God, so to speak. And finally, they would profess their trust in the arms below them. And then they would fall on. Everything was going perfectly. Every camper was caught. No one was hurt. Everyone was happy. Everyone was giving their fears to God and trusting their fellow cabin mates. It was beautiful. We were building cabin unity. My object lesson was working. I was being a great counselor. Yes, it's cheesy, the whole, give your fear to God. But hey, they're kids, and plus we're building cabin unity, right? And well, if we're building cabin unity, then it only makes sense that me, their counselor, their fearless leader, their wise teacher, would follow suit and end the trust and vulnerable bonding right. So I too took to the platform. I too stated my biggest fear at the time, and I too gave it to God and gave it to them. Please observe. All my friends dying, and I'm afraid of being alone.
What?
I'm afraid of being alone.
You just die?
I do.
You just die?
Yes.
Oh.
Falling.
We got it! That didn't work.
Let's play it one more time. And I'm afraid of being alone.
What?
I'm afraid of being alone. Listen to what they say. Yes. Falling.
We got it! That didn't work.
Yes. If you didn't hear at the end, you hear a kid go, well, that didn't work. And right before I hit, they go, we got him! And then boom! Well, that didn't work. Oh, the memories, and my back still tingles every time I watch it. Let me answer your obvious immediate questions preemptively right off the bat. Yes, what you saw was real. It was not staged. That was indeed exactly how it happened. That was not fake. Yes, those boys are only in 3rd and 4th grade. Yes, I really was that stupid. That's not what I expected. I really was that stupid. And yes, the world was that lucky to get it all on camera. Now, let me point out the 3 obvious problems with what we just saw. 1, they clearly pulled away, right? I mean, you saw it. It's their fault. I was about to hit, and they whoop. I mean, come on, right? Well, not quite, because problem number 2 debunks the first one because of, well, physics. Even had they not pulled away, there's no way that they would have been able to catch me. I mean, if my physics is correct, and by physics I mean my Google searches, then I was traveling at roughly 10 miles per hour, 4 meters a second or so, and while that isn't fast for a car, it is for a 19-year-old man falling on top of elementary school kids. And these 2 problems finally boil down to problem 3, my utter stupidity. What was I thinking? How in the world could I have expected 3rd and 4th graders to catch me, a 160-pound college student, falling from a height of 4 or 5 feet? Yet I did. I wholeheartedly, you could say even naively, trusted that they would catch me. I did. Heck, I even trusted God. At least I said I did. I fell to my hypothetical death without so much as a hesitation or even a thought of, wait, this might not be a good idea. I didn't. What makes it even worse is that apparently during training at the beginning of summer, our program director said specifically not to do the TF with 3rd and 4th graders. Where was I? Strike 1. To make matters worse, 2 years prior, I had seen a counselor at the same camp do the exact same thing, and the exact same thing happened to him. Strike 2. Folks, in this video, I personify folly, disregarding all logic, conventional wisdom, and previous experiences. Strike 3, and I struck out hard. Real hard. In the horrible time of failure, I was left with 3 decisions. You're noticing the list theme. Decision number 1, blame the kids. Reject that community. Number 2, blame God. Reject my faith, my creator. Number 3 decision, blame myself. Fall into guilt, shame, self-deprecation, depression, or some combination of all 3 of those. Or option number 4, move on. Kind of coined the phrase, learn, laugh, and live, because you know you're supposed to do alliterations for these things, but in essence, move on. It's pretty easy, right? I mean, you just live, you just laugh, you learn. It's pretty simple. Well, wrong, obviously. I'm still in pain. My back still screams. I'm still out of breath. My trust was still broken, right? How can you expect me to learn, laugh, and live in the midst of that reality? Suffering still exists no matter how many alliterations you throw at me. The reality is that I still felt, I still fell, or I still failed, or I still suffer, or I am still in pain. I still hurt. Insert your specific situation. So the question is how? How do I learn? How do I laugh and how do I live in the midst of falling or in the midst of difficult circumstances? Even though I fell, landed hard, was let down literally by those that I trusted, though God seemed to have deserted me, and though I personally screwed up royally, these 2 things remain constant and unchanging. The first one is this: Scripture is still true and authoritative in my life. It applies to me whether I'm standing on that platform about to fall, or whether I'm sucking wind on the ground afterwards. And second, and most importantly, the second constant is this: Jesus is still Lord. My failure or suffering or pain or loss does not change who he is. Fully God, fully human, God incarnate come to pay the price we ourselves could not pay. The perfect sacrifice offered himself to atone for our imperfection. His death on the cross reestablishes my relationship with God. And that doesn't change. That eternally, that reality does not change with my situations. It remains constant. When all else in life swirls around me and hits me and you, those two constants stay firm and grounded. Now, I know I use the trust fall as a cheesy, lighthearted dramatization as an example. However, I find that these principles and those two constants apply in the more serious, the more painful circumstances in my life. From my familial dysfunction to substance abuse to depression to suicidal thoughts, the word speaks truth and Christ is Lord. And that enables me to move on, to learn, laugh, and live. And ultimately, it empowers me to share those hardships with others out of a seemingly paradoxical thankfulness and genuine praise to God. Now, I'd be remiss if I declare Scripture as my ultimate authority, but then don't share a passage with you, or at least close with a passage. So let me do that now. The verse I want to end on is from 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verses 3 through 4. It says, "Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of mercies and God of all comfort, who comforts us in all our affliction, so that we may be able to comfort those who are in any affliction, with the comfort with which we ourselves are comforted by God." I pray and I hope that as a result of your failures or pain or suffering, the Lord is able to provide comfort to you, that you then are able to provide to others through your testimony and through his working in your life. To speak more on that pain and that suffering, my fellow Taylorite, so to speak, is going to come up and share a bit of her story. So please welcome Emily Wilson.
He never gives hugs, so this is really weird. So do you all remember orientation? My first orientation experience was at Taylor in Upland, Indiana, with a town that only had one blinking yellow light. I come from suburbia, outside of Philadelphia, East Coast. We have hills and more than just a blinking yellow light. Needless to say, I had an immense amount of culture shock, and our orientation ended with a giant hoedown. I don't do those, guys. But that year at Taylor, it was a really trying year for me. I think hands down, those 12 months were the most difficult months of my entire life. Basically, everything that could have gone wrong did go wrong. My health, I had a family member die and family stresses, and I had issues with friends, and I was having crazy mental health problems, all when I'm 12 hours away from the closest family member, and I'm in this strange land that does hoedowns for fun, and what am I doing here? And yes, that year was so painful, yet it was so redeemed. It was so redeemed for me. So like I said, I was dealing with all these health problems, and God worked in those. So during that academic year, that was definitely the bracket of painful time for me. But that summer, I had a job there, so I stayed. And I was living in a house with these women that I hadn't met before, so that was a good life choice. No, but actually, it was really great. And God used those women to speak to me, because for that season of my life, every time that I tried to talk to God, this is what it felt like. There was a glass ceiling above me, and I could see silhouettes of footprints, and I could hear muffles of conversation. But no one could hear me, and no one could see me. And I would say, God, answer me. All I want to do is know that you're there and care about me, even though I'm below this murky glass. But I got no response. And I didn't know what to do. And so that summer, I was living with these women who loved God so much, and every single week they would invite me to church, and it was exhausting. Because going into a church when the person that everyone is worshiping, it feels like they won't even give you the time of day. That's incredibly isolating, and that hurts. But the crazy thing is, I felt God in that house. One night, I was working on some crafts with a friend because that's what I did at the time. I was an art major. And she had a vision of me that God had given her of exactly what I just shared with you. I never told anybody about that before. And from that moment on, I can't deny the power of God. I felt God wrapping his arms around me in that moment. I had a physical reaction. And it was amazing. So yes, I still lived with this physical pain. I have chronic pain, and I still had it, and I still had lots of issues to deal with, and yet God was redemptive in that place. So this last fall, I had one of those phases of intense chronic pain. Basically, every weekend I would spend in bed. I was throwing up like randomly, and the doctors still don't know what's wrong with me or what was wrong with me. Fortunately, I'm going through a phase right now where I'm not dealing with it as much. But I was having these crazy amounts of abdominal pain. And whenever somebody would ask me how I'm doing, I'm very straightforward. In case you haven't had a conversation with me, I'm very upfront. So if you ask me how I'm doing and I'm not doing okay, I'm going to say, I'm not doing okay, but nice to see you. Goodbye. And you know what? At times, it felt like God didn't see me anymore. But I couldn't deny what had happened. And I didn't have a church home at the time, and the idea of going to a new place and trying to create new relationships was exhausting. And I was faced with these people who would just say these platitudes at me. Like, oh, you're going through all of this for a reason. God must be preparing you for something really big. And yes, that's probably true, but please don't ever say that to someone who's going through that, because that is like, thanks, that was super helpful. So instead of going into the church to receive platitudes that I didn't want and was already getting anyway, God spoke to me through other people. And I, fortunately, people like Tom, met with in his office all the time, and they pointed me back to Scripture. And you know what? It was still super discouraging sometimes, because a lot of stories in the Bible have happy endings, and I wasn't getting one, and I wasn't seeing any, I couldn't see the light at the end of the tunnel. That wasn't a thing that was on my radar, because I was hurting now. And there's nothing in here about, okay, so when you have abdominal pain, you should do this, this, and this, and then you'll be fine. Yay. No, that's not what's in here. But it was so fortuitous that the series last semester was on the Psalms, because that realness, that guttural anger and passion, that's what I was going through. And not only is it in here, and it's most of the Psalms are David's words, but these are God's words, because they're canon. That is beautiful. And the fact that I don't need to be afraid of these emotions and these feelings that I have, that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. So in Psalms 38 and 39, this is literally what I was feeling. I am like the deaf who cannot hear, like the mute who cannot speak. I have become like the ones who do not hear, whose mouth can offer no reply. Lord, I wait for you. You will answer, Lord my God, for I said, do not let them gloat or exalt themselves over me when my feet slip. For I am about to fall, and my pain is ever with me. I confess my iniquity. I am troubled by my sin. And in Psalm 39, hear my prayer, Lord. Listen to my cry for help. Do not be deaf to my weeping. I dwell with you as a foreigner, as a stranger, as all my ancestors were. Look away from me, that I may enjoy life again before I depart and am no more. I feel these words. And David here, he's so expectant because of what God has promised him. And so that brings me to the question of, so what has God promised me? What has God promised me in my pain? And you know, what has God promised all of us? I know we've all, from this past year, we all are going to leave this place for the summer with scars and wounds. That is the reality. So what has God promised us in this suffering? He promises us the kingdom. And you know what? It kind of hurts right now because we're not in that space yet. But the fact that we can join in with that redemptive activity and help bring about that beauty and joy is fantastic. So until then, we get glimpses of heaven. And in those, we can have so much hope. And we can see God redeeming these really terrible things. So some of my glimpses, that night in Indiana on a hot summer day when my friend told me her vision that she had about me. Another one, my weekly friend dates with Rachel Baldwin, love her to pieces. We drive to the beach and just sit there and talk and don't have to worry about any expectations and just stare at God's beautiful creation and just be in relationship together. Over winter break, I was invited to the Becker's house. Lauren Becker has been so amazing, and every conversation I have with her, how real they are and how full of wisdom they are, that is a glimpse of heaven for me. This relationship has been amazing, and I thank you so much. But you know what? We have a special guest here today. So Gavin Becker, it's his birthday. So Gavin, can you come up here? Do you guys mind singing happy birthday for Gavin with me? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Gavin. Woo! Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. I'm sorry if that was super embarrassing. Happy birthday. But those glimpses of joy and happiness. Yesterday, I came home from a long day, and my sister, she had bought me this little Star Wars Lego X-Wing fighter, and I got to make it and play with it, and it was awesome. Glimpses of heaven for me are when I experience euphoric joy. And they happen for me through relationships. And as I've reflected on these past 2.5 years that I've been at Gordon, but the past 4 years of me being in college, the things that impact me the most are the relationships and the ways that God has worked through them. So I ask you today, through your pain and your sufferings, and your trials and tribulations, to cling to hope. Cling to what gives you hope, and cling to who gives you hope. And as the band comes back up, I'm going to read to you part of Psalm 40, a psalm that I can now honestly sing. I waited patiently for the Lord. He turned to me and heard my cry. He lifted me out of the slimy pit, out of the mud and mire. He set my feet on a rock and gave me a firm place to stand. He put a new song in my mouth, a hymn of praise to our God. Many will see and fear the Lord and put their trust in him. Word of the Lord.